Going back to that question, I wonder how many of you are that person who people go to for advice. You're that person who people go to when they're heartbroken in some way, sad, they lost somebody or something bad's happened in their life, they've encountered some tragedy, and for some reason you're sitting there and you're thinking like, my God, why do people come to me? I don't have my shit together. My life's a tragedy. I'm going through suffering all the time. I'm melancholy. I'm miserable. Why do miserable people seem to seek me out like I have the answers? Why do you think they seek you out? Because they recognize their own. We recognize our own. You look like you got it together in the conscious. What they might mean unconsciously is, I can see that you present a face to the world that you're fine, but I know you're not, which means you're going through the same thing I'm going through. So I'm hoping that maybe you can help me get through what I'm going through, because you seem to be getting through it yourself. What it really is you seem so happy, although I recognize unconsciously that you really are sad and depressed, but you managed to make a go of it. Can you give me some advice? Can you help me get to a point where I can make a go of it as well? So we recognize our own. People who go through deep depression and have been there are often, and especially if you've emerged from it, then it's helpful to people who are in the depths of it. We talk about things being good. It's like, is this a good marker?
Does it work well?
Good question. That's how we know if it works well. Yeah,
It's a good marker.
It's a good marker. What's that?
It's a good marker.
It's a good marker. This is indeed a good marker. If a plane flies, it's a good plane. So, in other words, they fulfill their function. So, what's the function of a human being then, if we're going to say that someone's a good person? What's the function that they need to fulfill in order to meet that criteria? I like that. It unfolded slowly. Yeah. What's that? What if they deserve it? So not for anybody who doesn't deserve it. So maybe we have to be able to figure out who deserves it. I've got a list of people. Yeah.
I feel like, yeah, I don't know. Like, if you, like how you said, like, if you deserve it, then, like, do them harm or whatever. But I feel like that's what also makes a good person a good person. Because they're, like, so forgiving and, like, normal people wouldn't, like, forgive them or, like, give them good energy back, even though they did something bad. So that's how you know, like, the difference.
Alright, I need you to explain to me what energy is, man. I hear more and more people talking about this. Everyone keeps saying, oh, it's just like, it's like good vibes. Meaning what? Well, they just got good energy. What do you mean by this? You know. No, I don't know. That's why I'm asking. Well, it's kind of like if I point to a painting and ask you, is this a good painting? There's two parts to that decision. First off, the painting itself. And then, of course, the second part of that is?
The meaning?
No. Think more obvious. The person who's looking at it.
Oh, yeah.
Because both of us can look at the same painting. One person can say, this is a good painting. Some of us will look at that and say, not a good painting. So the viewer is half of the equation. The object is only half of the equation. And so if we're going to say that if we're going to say that someone's giving off good vibes, I don't know, is it that the person's giving off good vibes? Or is it that we're interpreting good vibes? And then I force you to figure out what that exactly means, because, I don't know, maybe it's just that we like the way the person dresses, or we like the way that the person stands, or we like the way that the person pronounces certain words. I don't know. It's a dangerous thing if we can't put our finger on exactly what that is, because that just means it's something, it's part of our own impression. Maybe it's not something that's actually out in the world, as much as it's just how we're interpreting it. So I asked that question, what do we mean by good energy? You said it, not me.
So I think that.
So we can judge a book by its cover. I thought we weren't supposed to.
Well, like you said, if it's there, it's.
God damn it, I'm confused now.
Because I remember you said like, oh, like if they look a certain way, then it's for a reason. Well, no, yeah, I don't think that.
We know much more than we understand. So when you're looking at a person, obviously, are there things that are in your consciousness? Well, yeah, of course. So you've got these three parts of you, of your mentality, you could say. This top part is your consciousness. In other words, that's the stuff that you become aware of. That's stuff that you can look at and say, what's on that counter back there? Printer, basket, papers. This is stuff that you're aware of. When you look at a person, you can see their eye color, their hair color, all of that. But then there's this thing that happens a little bit underneath, which is your unconscious. Your mind operates at this level too. It's picking up on things that you're not consciously aware of. In other words, I think it was in this class, right? We talked about what makes a person attractive visually. Symmetry. When you look at a person's face, their eyes, consciously you might not be aware that one eye is half of a millimeter lower than the other. But unconsciously, your mind is picking up on that. And I wonder if that's what we're talking about when we say that a person has good vibes. There's something about them that we can't really explain, and so we use this word that says, they give off good energy because it's an unconscious thing. Because you might say like, oh, it's the smile. By the way, smiles are creepy because you can't fake a smile to an unconscious mind. Meaning that when you actually smile, it's part of a chemical reaction that's happening inside your brain. It's a neurochemical reaction. And it lifts up muscles around the outsides of your eyes that we have no voluntary control over. So sometimes if you're looking at a person, you're saying, oh, that's a fake smile. It very well might be a fake smile. And maybe you can't explain why it's fake. You'll just be like, I don't know, it just looks fake. What you're picking up on is that those muscles that are out here that you cannot consciously lift and lower are not responding, which means it's not a real smile. And that's not necessarily a terrible thing. It's not necessarily a terrible thing, because maybe you don't feel like smiling, but you're still going to smile at the world. Because what are you going to do otherwise? Frown? And just bring everybody else down? So sometimes a fake smile isn't a terrible thing. It's just a person who's trying to make the world a better place, you might say. So maybe what we mean is that when we're feeling a person's vibe or their energy, we're feeling something here at this unconscious level. And so what we'd like to do eventually, and this is the job of self-analysis, is to bring the unconscious up into the conscious, so that now you can become aware of the things that you're not aware of. In other words, at that superficial level, maybe you'll want to measure a person's face when you meet them. Take out a protractor and a ruler and everything like that. Now you're aware, I think you're attractive because you have such great symmetry in your face. But that's, of course, just a superficial thing. We can also think of it in terms of like your early childhood experiences. You bring them from your unconscious up into your conscious to make yourself aware of them. If you don't know why you behave the way that you behave, it's just because, again, you're operating at this level. Once you can bring that up into here, now you can control your behavior much, much better. So maybe that's what we mean when we say that a person has vibes or a person has energy. I wonder how many of you are that person who people go to for advice. And people seem to think that you're wise for some reason. Maybe you're thinking like, I don't know why people come to me for advice. I don't know why people think I'm wise. Because there's something happening at this unconscious level on their part. There is something about you that stands out. It's like, I wonder how many of you are never approached by homeless people. I wonder how many of you are approached by every single homeless every single homeless person you see out in the world. You might think like, God, why me? There's something happening at this level that you're giving off. You don't mean to do it. And by the way, it's not a good thing, it's not a bad thing. It's just a thing. And this is the thing that people are responding to in the world, your unconsciousness. So the unconscious vibe that you're giving off. And they're picking up, and they may not be able to tell you what it is. Now, a really astute person will be able to tell you what it is. So, for example, there used to be a thing where I would go through airports. And I'm not joking. 100% of the time I went through an airport, I was stopped by security. 100% of the time. It happened for several years. And then all of a sudden it stopped. Can you guess why I was stopped for a while? And all of a sudden, what might tip them off?
Did you look like someone?
No, not particularly. That's a good question. I did, because here's the thing, I did have one time, I was coming back from Israel, and this was after I was already detained by Israeli security for a few hours. The guy at LAX, LA International Airport, security guy, he said, oh, you look like that drummer from Metallica. I go, oh, Lars Ulrich. He goes, yeah. By the way, I look nothing like Lars Ulrich. Hair color, nothing is the same. And I just go, is that going to be a problem? And he says, you bet. And he hands me back my papers. I'm like, God damn it. And I start to walk away. I didn't get more than 15 feet before security stopped me and wanted to search my bags and all that. So, why do you suppose they'd have stopped me? Yeah.
Is it because you're white?
Because I'm white? They would be stopping a lot of people. And by the way, I wouldn't expect you to know this. I'm just wondering what maybe would, in your mind, stand out that security would want to stop somebody.
Do you look like someone?
Yeah, you just asked. Yeah, not so much, but me and Lars Ulrich did have something in common. Yeah.
Did it seem like you were hiding something, or you were nervous?
So there was something about them that they thought I was hiding something. What would I be hiding?
Drugs.
Yeah, so there's something about me that they looked at and they said, this guy's smuggling drugs. And again, it wasn't half the time, man. It was 100% of the time. I would tell my friends, I'd go to the airport with them and just say, hey, look, I'll catch up with you. Like, why? I go, because security's going to stop me. They always do. Yeah.
Were your eyes red?
Mm-mm.
Oh.
My eyes are green. I had long hair. And there was something about the way that I wore the long hair that they just assumed I was a drug trafficker. Well, yeah, smuggling stuff in. And then I found out later on that there was something else that when I go through Israel, that they would detain me for long periods of time. And I did find out what the reason for that was, which is that I wasn't in a hurry. I was fine. I'm like, yeah, go ahead, do what you gotta do. Apparently most Americans, when you stop them, they get really angry. And so because I was so compliant and just like, yeah, whatever, because I'd get there early, apparently me being compliant tipped off to them he must be hiding something. Because that's why he's trying to not raise our suspicions by getting angry. But apparently when people get accused of that stuff, they get angry. Now that's something that I didn't know. And the hair thing was something that they obviously it tips them off, but that's because it's something that they brought from this unconscious level into the conscious level. So now they could actually operate effectively in the world this way by saying, here's the thing that tips you off. Now there's value in that, of course, for a few reasons. First off, the more that you can bring up from your unconscious into your conscious, now the more you can appreciate the world, the more things you can encounter in the world, the more the world makes sense to you, the less you walk around and say things like, I don't know, I don't know. And then you'll also be able now to help identify creepy people, but also identify people who aren't really creepy, they just kind of come off that way. You'll be able to identify people who are just eccentric and strange. And then, of course, there's some really interesting people. So, going back to that question, I wonder how many of you are that person who people go to for advice. Or you're that person who people go to when they're heartbroken in some way, sad, they lost somebody or something bad's happened in their life, they've encountered some tragedy. And for some reason you're sitting there and you're thinking like, my God, why do people come to me? And you might be thinking, I don't have my shit together. My life's a tragedy. I'm going through suffering all the time. I'm melancholy. I'm miserable. Why do miserable people seem to seek me out like I have the answers? Well, why do you think they seek you out? Because they recognize their own. We recognize our own. We like to hang out with people, and we like to go to people who we know are empathetic. They might look at you and say, you look like you've got it together. You look like you've got it together in the conscious. What they might mean unconsciously is, I can see that smile doesn't lift your eyes on the edges. I can see those muscles aren't engaged. I can see that you present a face to the world that you're fine, but I know you're not, which means you're going through the same thing I'm going through. So I'm hoping that maybe you can help me get through what I'm going through, because you seem to be getting through it yourself. And again, that's happening at an unconscious level. It isn't just, oh, you seem so happy. How could I be more like you? What it really is you seem so happy, although I recognize unconsciously that you really are sad and depressed, but you managed to make a go of it. Can you give me some advice? Can you help me get to a point where I can make a go of it as well? Like I said, we recognize our own. People who go through deep depression and have been there are often, and especially if you've emerged from it, or sorry, even if you're just emerging from it, then it's helpful to people who are in the depths of it. It isn't always the person who's at the top of the ladder who can pull you up. Sometimes it's the person who's climbing the ladder. It can see you stumbling down. It can reach down and get you while you're both on your way up. Sometimes that person who's already at the top of the ladder is just too far out of emotional reach from us, so that we can't quite reach them. And it seems impossible to ever do so. So we seek somebody who's halfway up or 2/3 of the way up. So he's saying pain and suffering are always inevitable for a large intelligence and a deep heart. The more you feel, the more you feel. Large intelligence, you're going to find that unintelligent people oftentimes have very shallow emotions. And one of the things is you have to be able to understand the things that you're feeling, that you're going through. Unintelligent people also have difficulty controlling those emotions. This is why they do dumb shit all the time. I'm just talking about like acting out, especially through anger. I was thinking of somebody who I know who I won't say too much about them, but they're a manager at a significant retailer. They make a decent amount of money. But this is a person who I talk with them, and they're essentially just like a 35-year-old adolescent. They still, slash tires when they get angry. It's like, dude, I'll just tell you, he's a father. He's got 3 kids. And yet when he gets pissed off, he still goes and slashes tires. It's like, dude, what's going to happen if you get into trouble? What's going to happen if the person comes out and there's an altercation? Your kids are going to not have a father for a while. You got to think about more than yourself. And he's like, I know, but I just get so emotional. He also happens to not be a particularly intelligent guy. So he doesn't know how to handle those kinds of things. He can feel at a superficial level, but he can't feel it at the deeper level. He can only feel one emotion at a time. How many of you guys have seen Peter Pan? You know the story of Peter Pan. You guys know Tinkerbell? That's the whole thing behind Tinkerbell. Tinkerbell, the moral of her story is that she's tiny, and she can only feel one emotion at a time. So the emotions that she feels are extreme. She feels anger, or she feels jealousy, or she feels like deep love for Pan. But she can never feel deep love and anger at the same time. That's the kind of thing that would balance you out to not do something stupid like that. I want to slash this guy's tires, but you know what? I love my family so much, I can't do something really stupid and leave them without a father for a while. So I'm going to not, as much as I want to do this, I'm not going to do it. No, the emotionally shallow person can't juggle more than one emotion at a time. So it's just anger. Go do this thing. And then afterwards, feel really guilty about it. And then maybe later on have love about it. But then be angry about it later on. They can't, manage all these things. The more intelligent you are, the more kind of control you have over those things for yourself. And so the more you can manage multiple emotions at a time, which of course is what creates this emotional struggle. The person who's so furious they just go off and slash tires, they're not undergoing any kind of emotional struggle. It's very clear to them what they need to do right now, which is go slash a tire. And then afterwards, if they get caught, then the emotional struggle is guilt. I don't have any, I'm going to leave my family without a father now. And then when they get out, there's an emotional jubilation. The guilt is now gone, just one thing at a time. But again, if you can feel multiple things at a time, then that means that you're going to be emotionally pulled around all the time. And that's what he's talking about here. That's what Dostoevsky is talking about here. You're going to find yourself in a place where, of course, you're going to be unhappy because you're going to be emotionally torn around. It's the price you pay for being intelligent. And of course, the price that you pay for being emotionally unintelligent is that you run around and you slash tires when you're in your 30s and 40s. You're still doing like 14-year-old shit when you're that age. You never emotionally grow. You never psychologically grow. You never mature in those ways. You earn a little bit more money, but you will never earn what you could have earned because you won't be able to discipline yourself to get to the heights that you otherwise could have gotten to. All of those things come together. And this isn't a matter of judgment necessarily, because you are the way that you are. People are the way that they are. And true, oftentimes we settle into it and we choose to just say, this is just how I am, when you could be so much more. You could juggle more than one emotion if you really just attempted to, if you weren't so goddamn selfish and thought not just about your own anger at this moment, but the lives of other people who you might be affecting at the same time. I'm sure we all know people like this. It's not even just those anger things, but people who choose to get drunk when they know that's going to wreck their family. They don't care how their family feels about it. They do it anyway. Why? It's what I want to do right now. I want right now. Be careful about ever putting those four words together. I want right now. Because it's blind to the future. It typically ignores the past and history. And it inevitably excludes the feelings of everybody else around you. And when you emerge from that right now, you're going to emerge into a world that you created before the right now. You're going to have to pick up all the pieces of all the stuff that you did, and I'm sure we'll just say something stupid like, smile now, cry later. So to be a great person, there's going to be great sadness on earth. You're going to struggle with these things. And the more you care about other people, of course, the more you're going to suffer. But of course, if you don't care about other people, you're going to suffer also, because you won't be able to form those deep, meaningful relationships. I guess what I'm saying to you is that life is suffering. And you don't get to choose not to. But you can choose what you're going to suffer for. So make sure it's worth it. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms?